Hi, welcome to episode 45 of Startup Strides. Today, my guest is Anar Bayramov. He's founding product manager at Polygraf. Welcome, Anar.
Hi, Javid. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited about this episode. I feel like we have a lot to discuss, a lot to go through. So I'm not going to waste too much time, and I'm just going to jump into questions. But before we dive into everything else, I'm just curious more about yourself, your background, and I guess what led you into the startup world, the startup ecosystem, because tech entrepreneurship is not the most common path back home in Azerbaijan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I studied computer science, and back in the college, I was already chasing some software engineering gigs, things like freelancing, internships, anything I could get my hands on. And yeah, I was lucky because I got to see both sides of the tech, the polished machine of like big companies and the beautiful like chaos of startups. And yeah, big companies, they have the resources, they have the structure, they have the mentorship, all things good. But there were like this, invisible wall for me specifically. And the downside for me was that you're kind of boxed in. So, right. So if you're an engineer, you're making engineering choices and decisions, and you're kind of limited with that, right? You don't pitch customers, you don't influence marketing, ops, or strategy, or product strategy for that matter. And yeah, that makes sense for big companies because they're risk averse and they cannot have an intern come and say, "Hey, I've got an idea that involves 5 departments or like 6 months of development." Yeah, so yeah, for me, that environment felt limiting. So I'm not wired like that. If I see a problem in marketing, for example, I want to fix it. If I see a sales deck that really sucks, I want to rewrite it. And in big companies, those attributes, in my opinion, they just make you look annoying, to be honest. And I think in startups, that set of characteristics that makes you more valuable. And yeah, as I mentioned, the startups are just quite opposite. They're messy, they're chaotic, but at the same time, they're fun. So you're thrown into problems, you're thrown into this place where you are the person who's responsible for end-to-end solution of your problem, and you can actually touch every part of the business, right? So for me, that specific freedom was very addictive. It's like a video game, right? So every day you're dropped into this new level. So you survive your fight boss, you unlock this door, you collect this resources. And yeah, sometimes it's a win situation, sometimes you lose, sometimes you die and respawn. And yeah, it's either way, it's I would say it's quite addictive. And the time when the your first customer says, "Hey, we actually need this. Can you ship this by tomorrow?" And you can actually pull it off, and you can get that subscription or payment that you wanted. I think that rush is kind of insane. So yeah, in Azerbaijan right now, I think this path isn't exactly the most like popular or normal. Um, I believe that my parents would have been much happier if I said I was joining a bank. But yeah, startups are risky, they're reckless, and honestly, it's even more harder in emerging markets because you don't have the same investor network, you don't have like mentorship cycle circles, you don't have as many like early adopters, and for you to often get to the same point as the US startup, you would have to do like twice or 3 times as much, right? So whereas the US startup would get there in half the time. So yeah, I think that's a good thing, and also good and a bad thing at the same time, because that's how emerging ecosystems grows. Um, because when people see some breakthroughs that are happening inside the country, it actually inspires others as well. So I don't know, like 10 years ago, nobody thought that, for example, you could build a global company or a global startup from here. And today, many people are trying they're seeing like different success stories, and it makes like the next one a little easier from the like mental perspective. And I think that's what really excites me. It's like startups are like this open map, and you get to see how far you can push yourself, and sometimes you can you even surpass your own expectations. So yeah, startups are risky, but for me again, it's the only place where I feel like I can use my full brain and not just the part that actually writes code. And honestly, um, once you get that taste of the freedom, I think it's really hard to go back. So I guess that's why I'm here today.
Fair. And I feel like product manager role is the perfect combination of those things.
Exactly.
You're at the
Exactly.
intersection of like customer interaction, but also you're dealing with the code and the technical parts of it. Um, I guess, to pull it back to Polygraph itself, right? Can you tell me more about the startup itself? Like, what are you guys building today? How the idea and the team came together?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So Polygraph is a suite of small language models designed for critical operations. So in plain language, in plain terms, what that means is we help organizations to detect AI threats, we help them protect their sensitive data, and we prevent AI-driven risks and frauds before they actually happen. So we work with customers who are in highly regulated industries. So we're talking about finance, we're talking about healthcare, law, insurance, government. So the organizations where one data leak or one compliance issue or mistake could actually mean millions of dollars in fines, or even worse, it could be a national security risk. So Polygraph for us is basically a way of saying, hey, AI is powerful, but at the same time, it's really dangerous if you cannot control it. And our approach was, I would say, it was a bit contrarian when we started. We were utilizing small language models, and those are the models that are actually secure. They're locally deployable. They require basically minimum resources while still maintaining quite high accuracy in detection and data leak prevention levels and so on. So yeah, I think this type of approach basically is what critical operations are looking for these days. And funny enough, our approach was often questioned until recently. NVIDIA released their research paper. It's called "Small Language Models Are the Future of," I think it was "Future of Agentic AI," and that paper outlined what we've been pushing so far forward with our solutions, right? So and what we're saying was like that small language models are actually secure, they're powerful, they're more suitable for agentic systems, making them the future of agentic AI. And NVIDIA just supported that vision as well. And, suddenly everyone's like, oh, maybe Polygraph was onto something, right? So yeah, that was a fun moment. To give you like a practical example or like a use case of what we're doing, maybe I could share like one of the use cases, right? So imagine that you're a doctor or a lawyer, right? We have one small language model that's called Secure LLM Chat. And again, if you're a lawyer, for example, or if you're a doctor, and you want to use ChatGPT, right? Normally, you would be scared of sending some sensitive data into the black box, which is an LLM. With Secure LLM Chat, what we do is we basically the second you hit like send button, we automatically redact all PII. So you can think like names, medical history, credit card information. Basically, depending on what you choose, we mask that data. And we do that with like contextual understanding of your prompt. So it's not like just keywords. So it's not like regular expressions. So we actually understand what the prompt says, and we mask all that sensitive data. And as a result of that, the LLM sees a safe, like anonymized version of your prompt. And when the response comes back from the LLM, what we do is we restore the original data and we put all PIIs in its place, right? So you get kind of the best of both worlds. So you have security and utility at the same time. And we at Polygraph, we never store your data. We don't have access to it. And from the performance perspective, we are 17 to 40% more accurate compared to like existing leading DLP solutions, and we are up to 68% faster than cloud-based solutions. So, in my opinion, for enterprises, that specific combination of like security and speed is, I think, it's a game changer, and that's what they're looking for. Speaking of the team and the foundation of the company, there's actually a funny story about it. It's not funny, but like there's a story. So our founder and CEO, who's Yakub Rahimov, he's a technical serial entrepreneur with like multiple previous exits. and he's been in ML world since like 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And he once, purchased an item online, and he left an online review about the issue that he had with one of those products. And that review eventually got removed from the website for absolutely no reason, with no explanation. So he tried to reach out to the support. There was nothing. And that triggered some sort of big question in his mind, and that is the uh, basically what's real, what's fake, and who decides what's what, right? So that's where basically polygraph vision comes into place, and our vision is clarity within chaos. So yeah, and Yagub basically teamed up with Vignesh, who's our co-founder and COO, and who's, by the way, the best strategy and operations person I've ever met in my life. So yeah, together they teamed up, and they basically built the foundation. And since then we've grown to like 15 plus people. We have like 6 ML PhDs in the team, and we are lucky enough to have advisors from the U.S. National Security. And honestly, the best part is the team energy, and because you feel like you're working towards something that matters, and you're working towards that something. That something is very crucial for the country and for security.
Got it. How did you come across Polygraph? Yeah, were you like,
Yeah, I met Yagub when I was in San Francisco a couple of years ago. I actually had my own startup at the time, and yeah, we met there. He told me about his vision, and yeah, that's basically how I became a founding member as well.
got it? And in terms of, you mentioned the use case, and the questions that comes to my mind, and perhaps it's not a really great question, but I still want to ask is it as like a single solution that can be integrated into different systems, or do you have to fine tune it? Was it like when you're applying for healthcare versus when you're applying for finance? Was it something else?
Mhm. Yeah, so we have our own models that are quite accurate at this point. So if there is a need, we can deploy it to for example, to our clients. They can test it, and they can see that, okay, this kind of accuracy and this kind of performance is okay for us. That's option one. And option two is, if they want like very specific results, if they want like specific accuracy, of course we can train on their own data as well. That's up to them. Again, since we're deploying locally, we don't have access to the models. We don't know what data is being transmitted across those models. We can offer like additional training based on that as well.
Got it. The idea was 0 to 1, right? Taking a polygraph from an idea to your first paid deployment. I guess what were the 2, 3 moves that really unlocked traction for you guys?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's quite an interesting topic to to talk about, because enterprises, they usually take their security pretty seriously. They just don't hand out contracts left and right, and especially not for like security products. So if you are a young startup below Series A, Series B, you're automatically at this kind of high risk list in their eyes. And the default assumption, or the default expectation from them, is that they're not going to be around in 2 3 years. So that's a big problem. And knowing that, we had to be very deliberate. So there is, of course, a certain funnel that we followed, and that basically that funnel allowed us to actually get to the first paid deployment. So basically, I would say the step number one was validation. And what I mean by that is, we didn't just build out an MVP and said, hey, look, it works, you can take it, right? We tested crazy to prove that it could actually meet the brutal standards of security teams. We ran a lot of penetration testing. We do like different benchmarks against some competitors, or like I would say every alternative solution. We pushed the system to its limit until it actually broke. Then we fixed it again. So it was like a complete cycle every time. And that rigorous behavior, or like attitude, gave us confidence, and it actually allowed us to sit across the table from a CISO, right, like a security officer, and actually show them that our product doesn't just work, but actually survive the worst case scenario. And you can test it yourself, and this way I think your credibility just grows way faster, and in the eyes of your clients you're just becoming a more reliable solution. So that's step number one. Step number two would be understanding your customer and their workflows, and understanding them deeply. So I think that's the step where a lot of founders they mess up. And we personally didn't ask the clients, like, right, we didn't just say what problem do you have, or like what's the current solution that you're using, right? With enterprises, usually the surface problem that they're describing to you is never the whole story. So what I mean by that is, you have to go into the weeds. So we did that. We asked different questions like, what's your workflow? Who touches your data? I don't know, like who signs off the approvals, like, right? So uh, when does the compliance get triggered, and at what points do security checks happen? And is our end customer an IC or is it a manager, right? So, and basically you need to find out what's the least friction point for you to integrate your solution. And once you have a full understanding of that, once you have a full understanding of the chain and how things work inside the company, I think you can present your company, and we personally did that as well. We could present Polygraph not as something like not as a new software to learn for their employees, but like it was an essential piece, a puzzle piece that clicked into the existing workflow. And I think that was the very big unlock for us. Once that's done, I think step three is just like the POC itself. So the stage of the demo and the trial. So again, I think at this step, a lot of companies make a lot of mistakes, and I think the number one mistake is they run free pilots, which I don't think is a good idea. We personally, in a company at Polygraph, we decided early on that we're going to charge for POCs. And you might be asking why? Well, because the problem that we're trying to solve is actually really painful for enterprises. And you need to understand that the cost of the POC, that the cost of the pilot that you're running is just tiny compared to the cost of the problem that enterprises are facing, right? If they won't pay, that's a red flag from the enterprise. And charging early also like sets the tone between you and the customer. You're basically saying that we're not just another solution, we're not a toy, but we're entering a new relationship, which is we're partners now. And at the end of the POC, basically there are two branches that come out of POC. And first is basically you need to sit down with your customers and basically compare results against the success criteria that you defined with them prior running the POC, right? And if you actually hit that result, hit those criterias, great, right? So you go to the next stage, and that is the proposal stage. And if not, you basically need to dug in even deeper. And you need to understand what failed. You need to understand why that thing failed, and you need to understand what do you have to do to actually fix that. So sometimes that means that you need to run another POC, and that will take some more time. But sometimes it means that you're going to walk away with a hard-earned feedback, because sometimes enterprises will say that, hey, it didn't work, thank you, we'll try something else. Yeah. But again, each round, I think it would just make your product more sharp. So and yeah, honestly, I think the underrated factor here is for a lot of companies, it's just patience, especially with enterprises. The sales cycles are usually too long. It could be anything from 6 to 12 to 18 months. So you need that stamina to keep up and to follow up with them without actually being annoying, and keep the relationships warm, and do not really panic if things move slowly. And I think that patience combined with validation that you did earlier, with deep workflow mapping, and basically charging for your POCs, I think that's what basically helped us to unlock our first paid deployments.
Got it. You speak about going beyond POCs, right? And I feel like in the age of AI, there's a bit of in my personal opinion, there's a bit of a change in terms of like how we approach PMF, product market fit. We're seeing this rapid expansion of certain AI solutions. There's this insane scaling of ARR in a very short period of time. And I guess I'm curious, since you're building in the AI space, how do you define product market fit for AI infrastructure or applications? And what signals matter to you beyond just proof of concept?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Um, for me, product market fit, and I think it usually applies not only for startups who are working with enterprises, but like with startups who work with B2B and B2C customers. I think for us specifically, basically product market fit in AI infrastructure is not just about, as you mentioned, getting someone to run your POC and saying that, hey, yeah, that looks nice, it looks good. I think it's a validation, sure, but it's just surface level, right? So it's not enough for you to actually say that you hit the product market fit. I think the real signal here is that when the customer actually recognizes, recognizes and reorganizes the part of their workflow around your product. So I think that's when you know that this is not just another software, but it's mission critical, right? So you can think of it like this. So imagine if your tool gets deployed and suddenly managers and they're building their own reporting structure around your solution, or I don't know, like compliance officers, they're referencing to your dashboards, right? Or like when it comes to like actual identification of risks in their meetings, right? So I think that's the real deal. And another signal I think is when your customers start asking for features that you didn't even think of, or not just make the UI prettier, or not like surface level stuff, but like things like, for example, can you integrate this I don't know, into our compliance audit process that we can run on a quarterly basis, or on an annual basis. I think that kind of requests only comes from people uh, who are deeply understand what your solution is, and who are using your product, and who are dependent on that product. I can give you one example from our history, is that we had like an early enterprise client last year. They initially brought us they came to us basically to test like the AI detection accuracy that we have in our data provenance solutions. And that's pretty narrow scope, but by the end of the POC, their compliance teams, they came up to us and then they said, hey guys, we want this hooked up to our internal audit pipeline, and it saves us a lot of hours every week, so we need that. And I think that's the time when you realize that that's it's something that it's not just a feature, but this is like a real workflow transformation. And that workflow transformation is actually because of your product. Another thing I would say, yeah, that you need to look out for when it comes to like product market fit is that client expansion without your asking for it. So you can think of it like this. So when customers they start using your product for use cases you never pitch them on, I would say that's I think that's pure gold, because for example, we had a law firm who initially used us for their document analysis, document review, but then they started using our redaction API for client communications, and it was also for contract analysis as well. So that expansion, it actually happened organically, because we saw that, hey, they saw actually that there's a value, and they started experimenting differently, trying to find out, okay, since we're using this solution, what are some other ways that we can integrate it into our workflows, like something that even we couldn't think of. And I think that's different from us trying to sell them something like additional modules. It's them, pulling our product into the new parts of their workflows, because they trusted that it would work. So I think that's in general, proof of concept is like validation, but product market fit is when your product becomes like kind of invisible, right? And what I mean by that is people when people stop saying we're just using Polygraph, and they start saying, hey, this is just how we do things now, that's the line that you want to cross.
Oh, that's a very, very good point. Very eloquently put. One thing I'm curious to hear from you is I know a lot of big organizations right now have big budgets, right? Budgets assigned just for AI deployment, AI purchases, etc. So a lot of companies are willing to spend. The real measure for me is the stickiness, like how willing you are to come back to return, to repurchase the AI solution out in the market. And AI hype is massive. Obviously, everybody's trying to build something in AI space, a lot of tools. But I feel like a lot of tools end up just being as novelties and as not as you just said, like necessity. So what's your sort of framework for deciding whether an AI product or feature is truly a must-have?
Hmm. Yeah. It's me personally as a product manager actually ask that a lot when we're working on our products, and there's this test that's called like, oh no, it's broken test. So basically, if you switch off a certain feature from your product or take it away for a day, for 2 days, for a week, uh, does your customer gonna say, "Hey, we're gonna manage. It's no problem," or will they actually panic and say, "Hey, this breaks everything. We cannot live without it." I think the must-have AI features, they're they're not only used for demos. It's the actual features that the customers are facing, that the pain points, and they help those pain points to disappear. And the truth is, right now, AI specifically, there are just too many gimmicks, right? I don't know, like rewriting emails to sound like something else, like I don't know, different filters, or like turning your notes into, I don't know, like a rap song or something. It's really fun, but I wouldn't say it's like a must-have, right? So for enterprises specifically, the must-have features, um, they're always tied to one of multiple ways. So right, so it could be either saving money, it could be reducing risk, or it could be something. It could be something that enables them to do something that was previously unthinkable or impossible. And I think at Polygraph right now, for example, redaction engine is a great example, right? Nobody calls it a tool, but if we're going to turn it off tomorrow, some of our customers, I would say most of our customers, would be in violation of compliance requirements, and that's going to happen in 24 hours. I think that's a must-have, and that's how you can understand that it's not just a gimmick. Uh, Another example would be like the substitution test. So that's more about like competitors slash how good your actual feature is. So the question that you need to ask yourself is, can your customers actually easily replace your feature or your product with a human process, even if it takes long, will take them longer, right? So if the answer is yes, you're probably, as you mentioned, you're in the novelty territory. But if the answer is no, you might have something essential. So for example, um, a lot of companies these days, they use like AI powered email writing assistants. And those things are, I think, easily substitutable, and people can write emails on their own, and they've been doing that for quite some time right now, even before AI. And I think AI powered, for example, AI powered real time fraud detection processing of millions of transactions per second. I don't think that's could be replaced with human, right? So no human team can actually do that in that time, and that scale is actually irreplaceable. So that's that, and I think one final point that I would also make is uh, it's more toward enterprises, but it's actually quite essential. It's the budget gravity test. So what I mean by that is novelty AI that we're just talking about. When it gets cut when the budgets are tight, right? Must have AI tools. They are always protected, and sometimes even expended during those times because the cost of not having it is just too high. So you'd rather have it and save money than not have it and lose even more. And I've seen that happening many times. And the first things that go down during those budget cuts are like innovation projects. So you think of like, I don't know, chatbots or like AI generated like social media post content or some like fancy dashboards and visualizations. But like the last thing that they would get rid of is something that actually makes the impact in their on their revenue, on their risk, or like something that's related to regulatory compliance. So yeah, my framework for that is just simple. So tie it directly to the cost, to the risk, to the mission critical enablement. And if you see that you cannot probably do it, it's a novelty, and no matter how cool your demo is, it's probably not going to last very long.
Wow. Very interesting points. I'm actually going to rewatch this episode to make sure that I remember some of those things you said. Really. Um, one thing I am interested in hearing more about is, when a new technology comes, usually it affects the business models too, right? I feel like initially when the LLMs just came out, a lot of people were saying, okay, the end of SaaS is here, end of software as a service is here. And seems like there's been a shift, a certain kind of shift in the mindset too. I guess, somebody who's not only building but also selling the solution to those enterprises, etc. Can you walk us through the shift from SaaS model to AI as a service model? I'm just curious, like, is there any changes in the mindset, pricing, or customer expectations?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, as you truthfully mentioned, that shift is happening right now, and I think as we go further, it's going to just shift increasingly. Traditional SaaS, I think it was always more into, you log into your dashboard, you pay your monthly fee, and you're basically good to go. With so-called AI as a service, customers they just want more, right? So they just want more than just an access. They want control, they want integration, they want assurance. And right now, it's not enough to give them just a pretty web portal, right? So enterprises they want their AI to be plugged into their own workflows. Sometimes they want it to be deployed on premises because they cannot risk their data leaving their environment. And I think that's a huge shift in the mindset. And so instead of saying, hey, this is the product, take it, enjoy it, as it was with SaaS, you're now saying, we'll integrate this into your backbone of your operation. So it's a much more serious relationship, and there's just a lot more at stakes right now with AI as a service. Yeah, and as I mentioned, like instead of building just one single application, you're now building something that needs to work across different deployment environments. It should be integrating with like different systems within the enterprise itself, and it should accommodate with like different data residency and requirements. And yeah, just technically speaking, it's just much more complex. That's one point. Another point I would say, speaking from the like customizations perspective, the expectations for customization have changed drastically as well. With like traditional SaaS, customers they just accepted that everyone got the same features, and they're going to use that same set of features every time, unless the company decides to introduce something new. But like with AI as a service, we're shifting a little bit, especially like with enterprises. Every customer they want the models to be fine tuned for their specific use cases, for their specific industry, for their specific level of like risk tolerance, and I don't know, like their specific compliance requirements. And when you're in that scene, I think uh, for us specifically, for example, we've had a lot of customers ask us to train on their own specific document types, to adjust our redaction algorithms for their industry specific requirements based on their specific sensitive data. And I think this level of customization was pretty much rare in SaaS, in traditional SaaS, because but right now with AI as a service, it becomes kind of a new standard. That's that. And from the pricing perspective, as I mentioned before, SaaS is like, it's a subscription, right? So it's like a gym membership. So you pay like a flat fee, you get the unlimited use per month. But AI as a service, it acts more like utilities, I would say. So, customers say that, hey, we will pay based on how much intelligence that we're consuming, not just don't give us like arbitrary tiers. So what you have is you basically end up thinking about like metering, like compute costs, and fairness in a way that SaaS actually never really required. But I think it's at the same time it's really that's where it get a little bit complex, and because AI costs aren't linear, right? So, for example, like the first 1,000 API calls could cost us a certain amount of dollars, but like the next 10,000 might cost us less per unit, due to like batch processing efficiencies. So customers, they not always want to listen to that, and what they do is they want transparent, predictable pricing. So yeah, we have to be a little bit creative with pricing models these days, offering like things like reserved capacity or like usage tiers with some maybe volume discounts, or like subscription plus usage models. I think that's the new norm that we're seeing these days. And the last thing I would say is, with enterprises in particularly, we learned that customers they're willing to pay a little, not a little, but like significantly more for AI services compared to traditional SaaS. Even though they want different value metrics. So they usually don't care about things like number of users, or what they really care about is number of data that's been processed, or like amount of data that's been processed, or risk detection that was achieved. Not detection, but like risk reduction that was achieved with our solution for them, or like compliance hours that were saved. So that's the kind of new reality, and I think there's upside to that as well. And the main upside is stickiness. So when your AI is integrated into compliance workflow, you can understand that you're not just another SaaS app, and you cannot be canceled that easily on the next budget cut. And you're kind of becoming like a company's, like the part of company's nervous system, if you could say so.
Mhm.
You're you're getting much deeper level of partnership, and your customers are more likely to stay than leave. So yeah.
Got it. Got it. Like, there's so many valuable things you're saying. I'm trying to like remember all of them. Um, you you already kind of answered that question, but I'm going to use it as a segue to my next question, which is very much related. I don't really know what your ideal customer profile is, but I'm guessing you guys sell both to large enterprises, but also small to medium businesses. When you position your product for large enterprise versus the SMBs, um, how do you position it differently? Like, what values are you focusing on? And I guess any surprising insights you've uncovered in the process.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, sales is, I think it's drastically different when you're selling to enterprises compared to SMBs or B2Bs. And I think the enterprises, they care a lot about compliance. Again, as I mentioned, they care a lot about risk. They care about integration. While SMBs, they're mostly focused on different things, right? So we're talking about like simplicity, we're talking about speed, we're talking about cost. And with enterprises, they usually, you might spend like, I don't know, like 3 months just in their security review pipeline. They will send you like, I don't know, like 100-page questionnaire asking about data governance. And if you pass that hurdle, you're basically proved that, you're enterprise grade. And once you achieve that, I think a lot of doors open,
Mhm.
because SMBs, they just don't care about any of that, right? They jump in a call with you, like 10-minute demo, and if they see value in that, you can get them, and if they're not, they're gone. But like the surprising insight for me specifically, when it comes to selling, was just pricing itself, as I mentioned, right? A lot of a lot of people assume that in enterprises, people are stingy. They don't want to pay you much, but I don't think that's particularly true. Again, as I mentioned, if you're solving like a big enough problem for them, if you see that there's a pain point that's really big, enterprises will pay way more than you expect, because again, the cost of the problem itself is just massive, right? the only hard part is just getting through that procurement and compliance, which is like I think the number one reason that people don't want to sell to enterprises. But like SMBs, on the other hand, what they do is just like, they rave about your product. But like if you increase your prices for like $10 next month, they're gonna, start
Mhm.
complaining about it. So yeah, that's that. What else? I would say another thing is just decision making process during the sales. It often reveals that there are quite some differences. So, for example, in enterprises, you're usually selling to someone who will not necessarily use your product. So, you're not selling to your end customer. So, for example, with us, we usually talk a lot with CISOs, so security officers. They first have to approve it, and then once they approve the solution, the tool, then the analysts come into place, right? For example, the risks officers need to sign off after that, and then the compliance team will basically comes next. I think that means that your positioning has to work with enterprises on two distinct levels, and you're supposed to have both at the same time. So you're supposed to give a like strategic value proposition for the actual decision maker, which is, for example, CISO in that case, and you should also have a practical usability, right, for your end user, for the IC, for the person who actually going to use the product. And the problem is, if either of the groups hate it, you're not going to sell it, right? So you have to kind of make sure that everyone is satisfied. On the other hand, with SMBs, you're usually selling directly to the person who's going to actually use it. So it's going to be their either a business owner or like a marketing manager, and yeah, the I don't know, like the operations director, and they're evaluating both, like, will this solve my problem and will I actually use it on a daily basis?
Mhm.
And they're going to do right there, right in that call. It's going to be just much simpler, and
Mhm.
it's more personal, I would say. So yeah, you need different positioning. Again, for enterprises, you need to lead with compliance. You need to lead with risk and mitigation. And SMBs, you need to focus on like simplicity. You need to make sure that it's fast, and the main thing is that they can see like the immediate return of investment. I
Mhm.
think, yeah, it's gonna be the same product, but it's gonna be very different narrative depending on who you're selling to.
Very, very, very valid points. Very good points. Um, you're right. I guess I remember in our pride conversation you mentioned about in terms of this, organizations, large organizations. You said there's a high adoption, but
Yeah.
low transformation in AI. And I actually looked at it and I was like, oh, I'm going to ask him to clarify it a bit more for me. And also, I'm curious, why do you think that gap exists?
Mhm. Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite topics right now. Um, so everyone is talking about adopting AI, but like every board deck has like a slide that says AI strategy, or like when you go under the hood, you actually see that most of those adoptions are actually just shallow. So some of the examples could be, I don't know, like marketing team uses AI to write emails, or HR is using AI to basically draft an a job description, right? Or finance uses it to summarize some reports or financial statements. That's the adoption level we're talking about, right? Transformation, on the other hand, I think it's on the like whole new level. So transformation is when AI is basically fundamentally changes the business operation, and it's when basically processes gets redesigned, teams get retrained. Like sometimes even business models have to change for that shift to actually happen, and I think that's very rare in the current world. And the analogy that I like to give in this case is that you're like putting a very powerful engine into like a horse carriage. So it
Mm,
makes a lot of noise, it moves a little faster, but like the carriage itself was not built for that, right? So yeah, true transformation, in my opinion, it means building a car from scratch,
mhm,
and making sure that you're building in a way that it considers that new engine and it can utilize that engine for 100%. And you're not just swapping things around. And when it comes to the question, why does this gap exist? I think transformation in general is a very scary process. It requires a lot of executives to admit that, hey, we've been doing this business like in a certain way for like 20 years, and right now all of a sudden it might not work anymore. So I think that's terrifying for executives. And adoption is safe compared to transformation, because you can just say that, hey, we're AI first company, we're using AI, and it might affect you. It might affect your stock. It might go up. It might affect you on paper. But like the actual value comes from transformation. But again, transformation is risky. And yeah, in big organizations, I think risk is the scariest part for them.
Uh, yes, actually, I was thinking about it, and this legacy organization that try to adopt AI and can embed into their workflows is not really doing as good of a work versus companies that are AI native, thinking, reimagining all the workflows from the ground up with AI. And as you said, it's really hard for large organizations, right? Like there's a bureaucracy involved, there's this established values, and change is always scary, whether you're a human or you're an organization. Um, I'm just curious, as a follow-up quick question, maybe, do you have any large organizations in mind that you think they are doing a pretty good job with this AI transformation?
Um, well, most recently, I think the CEO of Duolingo mentioned that they're now AI first company, and they actually got a lot of hate from public
Yeah.
because he said so. Because and I you can understand that as well, right? So the management at that company, they have to their main value proposition is that they are delivering the unmatched, like really good lessons when it comes to learning languages. But now that they're using AI, the quality of those lessons might just go down, because you cannot trust AI to be super creative.
Mhm.
And the most of the value that, for example, Duolingo was providing for their customers is that each lesson was handcrafted by their employees, and employees are real people, and employees understand the pain points of other language learners. And yeah, that's why I think they tried, but they maybe couldn't get to that point. I don't know if I can bring up any examples of actually successful companies who did that. I need to think about it.
Fair enough. Um, I know you have. I mean, obviously, you're building a startup in this space, but also you're interested in security and compliance. I actually wanted to ask this question earlier on, but I kind of forgot. What are the biggest misconceptions, I guess, you see around AI security and compliance, and what's your practical checklist for companies rolling out those, AI in price critical environments?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Um, the biggest misconception I would say is that a lot of people think that security comes last and comes at the end. And teams, they can build like an AI product, and when they're about to launch, they're like, oh wait, is this actually going to be compliant? Is this secure? Can we do that?
Mm,
So that's like, that's the process is just reversed. It's completely backwards. And in critical industries, security, it doesn't act like a separate layer. It's just like a product by itself. So security is a product. And when it comes to the checklist, I think there are multiple steps that you need to follow. Well, first of all, is I think the data classification. You need to know exactly what data you're dealing with, right? What's sensitive, what is not sensitive, what is regulated, what is safe to use, what is not safe to use. So if you don't know that, you are already at risk.
mm,
Another thing I think is like one of the most important things is just local control. You cannot send any sensitive information to any third party LLM without redaction or without masking, right? So I think it's not even questionable at this point, especially for highly like critical operations.
mm,
Another thing I would say is audit trails. So basically, every interaction that you have with AI, it should be logged somewhere, and it should be reviewable by security officers. security or compliance officers, they need visibility and they need to understand like what are the points in our organizations where potentially could happen. And if you have those audit trails, that's just like makes the job like in the life way easier.
Mhm.
Another thing is, I think just the governance itself. So, right, you have to have a clear set of policies. Who can use AI, for what purposes, for under which circumstances, for which specific workflows. If you don't have that, set up in the company, I think it's a clear road to chaos. And I think my another point would be just again related to audit trails. There should be like a continuous monitoring, and everyday threats, AI, specifically AI threats, they evolve, and regulation evolve as well. So your guardrails, they need to evolve too. And basically right now we're at the stage where we're building on a sand, and just you need to make sure that your compliance can and your company can check off those boxes and say
Mhm.
that hey, we're in a safe space, we know what we're doing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's that.
Fair. We talked about adoption within organizations, we emphasize how important security as a product itself is. Besides that, I'm curious, what type of AI application do you think will dominate enterprise adoption over the next 2, 3 years?
Mhm. Yeah, I think there are multiple things that could happen potentially. First, I think the right now we have like different agents, we have co-pilots. I think that's going to be improved and integrated even better. So we're not going to just see people using AI agents for like things like Office or like Gmail. I'm talking about like things like CRM and ERP and compliance system and stuff like that, like logistics dashboard as well. So basically, every business application will have a certain AI layer that will help the end customers and the employees to work faster and smarter. That's one, and that's happening right now, and I think it's just going to be increasing exponentially right now. So the second thing I think that's related to us, so AI security and AI compliance. So the same way that 20 years ago, cybersecurity firms went from like nice to have to non-negotiable. I
Mhm.
think the AI governance will also most certainly follow the same path, and I think that every enterprise will eventually need it, and need it in a way that they will need it to stay operational. If they don't have it, they're not going to be operational. That's second, and I think the last point is um, AI for decision support. So I'm talking about like management. So we're not replacing executives, but like giving them superpowers in a way that you can do some either like real time assessments, or you can do like scenario simulations, or like automated like data digestion and stuff like that. Basically, better foresight and better insights for that actually drive some core business metrics. And I think the main thing that will basically drive everything is just the boring stuff is always wins. So enterprises, they don't care about gimmicks, right? They
Mhm.
only care about survival. They care about like cost savings. They care about compliance, and yeah, those I think those are the applications that will dominate in the near future.
Got it. Yeah, the boring and sexy stuff usually ends up winning.
Yeah.
You already touched upon it, especially with the NVIDIA papers that you said really was a huge boost in support in terms of what your vision about around small specialized models. But I want to ask a more kind of related question, but perhaps needs a bit more elaboration. Do you think small specialized models will become the norm? Or do you think we'll continue seeing these consolidations around mega LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude?
Mhm. Yeah, I think I think both are going to be existing in the near future, and I think that's the interesting part about AI evolution. So you can think about it like for like gravitational pull is definitely going towards small and specialized models. So I'm talking about mostly like enterprise applications. Those are like fundamental reasons why this is inevitable. But like on the other hand, the LLMs, like the big LLMs like I don't know GPT-5 or Claude, there are incredible general purpose tools, right? So it's like having in like I don't know like brilliant generalist in your pocket who can do almost anything, right? With writing, with analysis, like reasoning, and so on and so forth. And I think they they big LLMs, they will always have place. It's like it's just like Google, so they will always exist as a general kind of like a search engine. But when it comes to critical operations, like especially in highly regulated industries, in my opinion, general purpose models have like deal breaking limitations. So the biggest one is just the black box problem. So you're sending your data to a model and you don't control that model, and it's running on the infrastructure that you don't own, and it's trained on the data that you cannot audit, and you get back answers that you cannot really fully explain. Again, as I mentioned previously, for marketing and for HR, it could be fine, but like for a bank who's making a
Yeah.
loan decisions, and hospitals who are diagnosing, patients, or like law firms handling very sensitive data, I think that's professionally and legally unacceptable. And yeah, it's just like another analogy I would make is like the same related to transportation. Like we have these massive cargo ships that are carrying everything across oceans. They are super powerful. They're incredible. They're versatile, but most people don't use that. Don't use cargo ships. They for their daily commute, right? They use something that's smaller, that's more efficient, that's more suited for their specific needs. And I think similarly to, for example, GPT-5, when you need to brainstorm like a marketing campaign or like write a complex analytic reports, that'll be fine. But you'll need to use specialized small language models when you need to process something that's, for example, like legal documents, or like analyze like medical images and so on. So yeah, I think we see that there's going to be a hybrid ecosystem emerging, and mega ones will be used for general purpose tasks, creative work, and small language models will be more like specific, domain driven applications where you need more control, where you need more performance, and like stuff like that. Yeah.
Got it. This is definitely one of the most informative episodes I've done so far.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Genuinely, it's especially there are certain things I've never, like I personally don't really have a lot of information in the security compliance space, so it's a lot of good learning happening for myself as well. So my selfish side speaking right now. We're coming towards the end of our episode, so I'm going to ask more kind of reflection based, kind of advice based questions,
Mhm.
and I guess one of them would be more on the funding side, especially considering, I feel like you have a very you would have an interesting perspective, because not only you have understanding of the Western ecosystem, but you also have understanding of the origin ecosystem. And before, I feel like we'd see a lot of bootstrapping happening in SaaS space, because the costs weren't as especially in the software weren't as insane. Even the seed rounds you see right now, it's 20, 50, 60, whatever million sometimes, and which was before unheard of, right? There were growth stage investments. So I'm curious, what do you think about bootstrapping versus kind of raising early, and how should founders decide which path to take in today's AI startup landscape?
Mhm. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk from my point of view, and from a point of view of a company who builds like dedicated small language models, and like it's a bit different story compared to if you're a founder who's building just like a B2B solution.
Hmm.
I think it happened like there are just two things that you kind of need to keep in mind. So I guess it's your ambition and your burn rate. So what I like about bootstrapping is it definitely forces to stay disciplined, and you build what your customers will pay for, and you avoid any shiny distractions, any features that you don't actually need, and you actually stay lean. But at the same time, it also means that you move a lot slower, and there is a huge risk that you're gonna miss a certain window in the fast moving AI market. Right now, if you're not going to build something really fast, someone else will, and you just lost a certain portion of the market, right? On the other hand, raising early gives you speed, but again, it comes with the pressure as well, right? You're now on someone else's clock.
Mm.
And I think in AI, compute costs are just number one thing that's like super brutal. And we're talking about, tens of thousands of dollars a month for model training. And yeah, bootstrapping in that case, if you're building something like that, it just might not be possible for you specifically. So yeah, if you're just building AI applications, I think basically like it's like a tools that are like on top of existing foundational models. I think bootstrapping is just more valuable for you. You can build some lightweight stuff. You can build it and ship it really quickly and get the revenue, and then think about funding properly. But again, if you're building something that's related to AI, as in like infrastructure, like models, I don't know, chips or like foundational layers, I think that's probably where you need to raise early, because those costs are just enormous and the market just wouldn't be waiting for you.
Mm.
And of course, there is no like one size fits all answer for this question, but I think if you know your own category, if you know your market window and your risk tolerance, I think you can make the right decision.
Got it. For young founders and PMs coming out of emerging ecosystems like Azerbaijan or like Central Asia, what advice would you give for building globally competitive startups?
Yeah, that's interesting. I usually don't like giving out any advice because each founder, each company is unique in their own way and they face different things. But from what I learned so far is, first of all, I would say that you need to increase your luck. And again, there are different types of luck, but the one luck that you can really affect is your, I think it's called like move luck. So, the luck that comes from you grinding and working hard and trying to find different opportunities around you, seeing things that other people don't see. That just drastically pushes your move luck. And yeah, if you have that, I think it's a great starting point. Um, Especially like if we're talking about Azerbaijan in particular, I think a lot of people are scared of failure,
Mm.
and it's stigmatized in this region.
Enough.
Yeah, and people, usually people hide it. They would say I built 5 startups, but they wouldn't say that all of them just they went to zero in like 3 weeks.
Right.
So yeah, you need to fail, but you need to be proud of it, and I think that's how you build credibility specifically, because even like with investors, I don't think they respect uh, perfect slides, but I think they respect scars
Mm.
that founders have, and I think that's the main point for them. Another thing, especially for founders from like regional like emerging markets, I think you need to build your global network from day one, and I think it's one of the most important advice, because you cannot just network locally and hope that you'll be competing with the global players.
Mm.
You need to build relationships with other founders, with other investors, customers, partners, because you need to have a different view on the same problem from different perspective, right? If you only talk to people locally, you are probably seeing the problem from the same like angle. On the other hand, if you know people from other countries, from other markets, they might say something that you wouldn't even expect, right?
Mm.
So yeah, that's that. And I think yeah, you need to remember that innovation it can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be locked to a certain region. And I think the most creative solutions, they come from places that you wouldn't even expect. And we're not trying to copy the Silicon Valley. We're trying to build something that people in Silicon Valley couldn't or wouldn't build. So yeah.
What quick follow-up question. What kind of changes would you like to see in the ecosystem to, I guess, facilitate? Is that even better?
I think people should, when they're building something, they should think about their products and their solutions as if their customers are in New York or London or anywhere else, right? It's not only Baku. So when you have this open mindset about how you approach the problem, how you approach the solution, it just drastically changes the way you see that problem, and that just that could be one of the reasons why you could get success, whatever success means for you. What else? I think people need to consume a lot more literature that's, again, from Silicon Valley. Again, we need to learn from the experiences that other people already have. And I think like watching a lot. There are like a lot of great free resources you can find on YouTube. Things like, I don't know, Y Combinator, Startup School, and stuff like that. So these are the people who went through like millions of applications, millions of products, and they have a certain mindset about whether the product will be succeeding or not, whether that market actually needs it. And I think if you consume a lot of content that comes from the Valley per se, that kind of changes your mindset into thinking more broadly.
Mm. Do you think the VC ecosystem is improving in our regions?
I've had a chance to work with quite some number of startups here locally. I think the picture right now is changing uh, in a good way, in a positive way. I don't like 4 or 5 years ago, the picture was completely different, right? Right now, I think the market and the region realizes that we need to focus more onto stuff like innovation, stuff like bringing up young people who would have like entrepreneurial spirit, and I think there's a lot of support that comes specifically for those type of people. And yeah, I think, or I hope, I want to believe that this positive impact will only bring up more founders, and we'll have more entrepreneurial spirit in the country.
Yeah, I think I remember one time I was having a conversation. I don't know if it was a founder investor, and said what we need also more role models that will not only inspire but also will kind of provide the bit of a playbook for others to follow too. And people like you are those young founders that are defining those playbooks. I'm gonna ask my final question again. Thank you so much for such a wonderful episode. My final question would be, what I always like to ask this slightly controversial, slightly contrarian, beliefs. So, what's your contrarian belief about how AI, about the AI startup ecosystems that most people in the industry would likely disagree with?
Mhm. I think a lot of people these days, they say that AI will replace you. I think my contrarian belief is that AI will not replace humans as fast as everyone thinks. Not just because that the tech isn't there or it's not capable. I think because the organizations are slow. The bottleneck specifically isn't the technology, but the humans themselves. So everyone loves saying that AI will take your job, but at the same time, in reality, AI won't take your job, but instead, a company that learns to integrate AI properly will take your place in the market, share. I think it's a more accurate way of framing it. So yeah, the view is that the limiting factor isn't the models, but like it's the managers, the policies, and the processes that we have set up. And yeah, tech is always moving forward. It's sprinting, and adoption is crawling. But yeah, that gap I think is going to be uh, defining the next decade.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks so much for such a lovely episode. Genuinely excited to hear more good news from you, and I hope to remain in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was great chatting with you.